I said it earlier, let's take the limits off of God. I like to just draw that line in the sand. March 13th, 2015, a new day of victory in my life. Amen. Please be seated if you would. I'm going to share my message with you in a minute, but we just are very honored to have you all here with us tonight. I'll tell you about a different part of my life. A little over 29 years ago, I walked into a jewelry store to buy a battery for my watch. Out walked the most beautiful girl I'd ever seen to wait on me. It was Victoria. We got to talking and I found out that she was a good Christian girl. I thought that's great because if she wasn't, I was sure about to convert her. But I went in there to buy a battery for my watch. She ended up selling me a whole new watch. She's been taking my money ever since then. I was in my early 20s and I had never really dated anybody before. I was busy playing sports. I was playing baseball 5 nights a week and tournaments on the weekend. And I thought, God, I'm tired of hanging out with all these guys. I need to find me a woman somewhere. When I met Victoria, that was God answering my prayer. So I got my nerve up and I asked her if she would go out on a date with me. It was really like my first date, my first official date. And it's a longer story. I won't bore you with all of that, but I'll tell you something interesting though. The first date I asked her to go to was to a Rockets basketball game. I had season tickets there at the Compact Center. Well, if you know much about our ministry, that's where we have church every week now, the Compact Center. Let me just back it up and I'll tell you why this is a little more significant, at least to me, is because, you know, I worked behind the scenes, like I said, for my parents for those 17 years and doing the production, lighting, the sound, and I love doing that. I like being behind the scenes. My dad had tried many times to get me out in front of people. I said, you know what, Daddy, I'm not a preacher. You preach, and I'll make you look good. But that's not where I don't want to be up there in front of people. But you know, it's a longer story too. When my dad died, I stepped up and took over, and you know, God's taken this world I've never dreamed. But here's my point. If you would have told me 16 years ago, Dad died in 1999, that one day I would be a pastor, and one day we would be having church in the former Compact Center where I had season tickets, I would have said, you know what, you are on the wrong planet. You don't know, you're not thinking clearly. I say that to say God's dream for your life is so much bigger than your own. When you keep honoring God, being your best, and I'm not bragging on me, but when I worked behind the scenes, I did my best. I tried to make my father look good. And, again, not bragging on me. I'm just saying, when you go to work and you give it your all, you get there early, you do the right thing, you do the right thing even though nobody's giving you credit. Listen, you're not working under people, you're working under God. God is the one that's keeping all the records. In fact, the scripture says promotion doesn't come from people, it comes from the Lord. Sometimes people, well, Joel, this job, they're not treating me right, I got passed over. Listen, when it's your time to be promoted, all the forces of darkness cannot stop you. You keep being your best, working under God, doing the right thing. The other thing people tell me, I'm supposed to be talking about Victoria, but this is good, isn't it? But the other thing people tell me is, but Joel, come on, man, I'm just a business person. I'm just a student. I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm just an architect. You're not just anything. You're a child of the Most High God. God has breathed His life into you. He's put purpose and destiny in you. I said it earlier, but you would not be alive unless God had another greater victory in front of you. God did not just leave you here to take up space. You've seen your best days. No, that's a lie. You have something more in you. Listen, I can tell you this with confidence because I didn't think I could get up in front of people. And my dad, I said, Dad, what would I say to him? I don't know how to minister. Well, I found out there were gifts and talents in me that I hadn't discovered. I believe in 2015, you're going to tap into some things on the inside of you. You didn't even know you were there. You're going to step up to a new level of your destiny. When that opportunity presents itself, don't you dare shrink back in fear. God wouldn't have given you the dream if He had not already equipped and empowered you. You have everything you need. Like Victoria said, some of those gifts may have fallen down to the bottom of the chocolate milk, but tonight we're stirring it up. You're well able to do what God's called you to do. Anyway, back on course now. I dated Victoria for Victoria, come on, I'll talk about you. I'm going to brag on you. we dated. We went on that first date, and then we dated for a year and a half, and been married for 28 years now, going on 28 years now. And, we have two beautiful children. You've seen them up here singing. I'm going to show them off again in a minute, but you know, I'll tell you this, I wouldn't be half of who I am today if it was not for Victoria. She has spoken so many words of faith and victory into me, and not only spoken it, but she's modeled it as well. I mean, when my dad went to be with the Lord, Victoria was in the jewelry business. This was all new to us. You know, we both stepped up, and as I said, you know, we never dreamed God would take us here, but let me tell you one thing. When my dad was pastor, we'd sit down on the front row during the service. Victoria would nudge me and say, Joel, one day you're going to pastor the church. That would make me mad. I would say, Victoria, I am not a preacher. I don't know how to preach. She'd say, oh yeah, Joel, just preach to them like you preach to me. I mean this in all seriousness. I had heard her tell me I could do it for so long that when my dad died, I didn't really tell the story, but when my dad died, I'd never preached before, and I stepped up, and that's when it all started. I'd heard her telling me that so long that, you know, when my dad went to be with the Lord, I believe that's one of the reasons why I knew I could step up and do this. Didn't know it was going to grow, but I'd heard her tell me that. So anyway, here's the principle. We got enough people telling us what we can't do. Your children, your spouse, your co-workers. Why don't you call out the seeds of greatness in the people God has put in your life? You can tell your spouse, your children. You know what I found? Sometimes you can see things in people that they can't see in themselves. Victoria saw this in me. So I encourage you to, let's take that example. And, you know, it's easy to tell people, oh, you're never going to do that. You think you can do that? Why don't you turn it around and say, you know what? You can become who God's created you to be. Speak faith and victory into the people God's put into your lives. Amen.